First contact. Sarah Martinez stood in her kitchen, surveying the feast she had spent the last 3 days preparing. The aroma of roasted turkey, honey-glazed ham, and freshly baked apple pies filled her modest home on Eden, for humanity's pride and joy colony world nicknamed New Hawaii. As the head chef of the colony's most prestigious restaurant, Earth and Delights, she had volunteered to host this year's Christmas celebration for the entire diplomatic corps. The irony wasn't lost on her. 10 years ago, when humanity made its great phase shift to escape the Kataskan Imperium's invasion fleet, no one would have imagined they'd be preparing Christmas dinner for alien diplomats. Yet here she was, making final adjustments to what could be the most important meal in human history. The phase shift technology that had saved humanity had become both their shield and their prison. While it kept them safe from hostile aliens, it also isolated them from potential allies and trade partners. Sarah's dinner party wasn't just about Christmas spirit, it was humanity's first carefully orchestrated attempt at diplomatic outreach since the shift. Commander Elena Rodriguez, head of Eden 4's Security Council, appeared in Sarah's doorway. Her uniform was pristine as always, but Sarah could see the tension in her shoulders. "How's it coming along, Chef?" "Everything's on schedule," Sarah replied, adjusting the position of a crystal wine glass for the 100th time. "Though I still think this is crazy. We've spent a decade ignoring them, and now we're inviting them for Christmas dinner." Elena smiled, though it didn't reach her eyes. "The council believes it's time. We've expanded as far as we safely can, and our scientists say the phase shift technology is starting to show strain. We need allies, not just walls." Sarah nodded, remembering the recent news reports about phase shift fluctuations in the outer colonies. The technology that had saved them might not last forever. "And you really think they'll come? After all this time?" "We've already received confirmation from 3 delegations," Elena said, checking her tablet. "The Sarannai Imperium, the Zeltharian Collective, and..." She hesitated. "And..." "The Kataskan Imperium." Sarah nearly dropped the serving spoon she was polishing. "The Kataskans? The same ones who tried to enslave us? Are you insane?" "Peace means making difficult choices," Elena replied firmly. "Besides, they're not the same leadership. The failed invasion of Eden 4 led to significant political upheaval in their empire. The new High Counselor claims to want peaceful relations." Before Sarah could respond, her kitchen's holoscreen flickered to life with an emergency broadcast. The face of Admiral James Chen, Supreme Commander of Eden 4's Defense Fleet, appeared. "Attention all citizens. Our long-range sensors have detected multiple vessels entering the system. They appear to be registered to our invited diplomatic delegations, but..." He paused, his expression grave. "We're also detecting numerous unregistered ships entering through multiple vectors. Several match profiles from known pirate fleets and rogue elements." Sarah's heart sank as she looked at her carefully prepared feast. Elena was already speaking rapidly into her comm unit, calling for emergency response teams. "The phase shift generators are charging," Admiral Chen continued, "but we're experiencing unexpected interference. All citizens are advised to remain calm and proceed to their designated safety zones." "This is not a drill." The lights flickered, and Sarah felt the familiar tingling sensation that usually accompanied a phase shift. But something was wrong. The feeling faded instead of intensifying, and the light stabilized. "Elena?" Sarah asked, trying to keep her voice steady. "Why aren't we shifting?" Before the commander could answer, Sarah's kitchen window erupted in a brilliant flash of light. Through the glare, she could see dozens of ships descending through Eden 4's atmosphere, ships that definitely weren't part of any diplomatic delegation. "Get to the basement," Elena ordered, drawing her sidearm. "Now." Sarah hesitated, looking at her feast one last time. 3 days of work, meant to be a symbol of peace and new beginnings. Now it would likely become a meal for whatever pirates or raiders had managed to breach humanity's greatest defense. As she hurried toward the basement stairs, following Elena's urgent gestures, a thought struck her. In all the chaos and fear of the moment, one detail seemed absurdly important: she'd forgotten to turn off the oven. The sound of breaking glass upstairs told her it was too late to go back. Whatever was coming, they would have to face it without the protection of the phase shift technology that had kept humanity safe for so long. And somewhere above them, a Christmas feast sat waiting, a testament to hopes of peace that now seemed naively optimistic. The basement door slammed shut behind them, and Elena quickly engaged the security locks. In the darkness, Sarah could hear the commander's comm unit crackling with desperate reports from across the colony. Something had gone terribly wrong with humanity's perfect defense, and her Christmas dinner was about to have some very unexpected guests. Unexpected allies. The basement of Sarah's home had been designed like all structures on Eden 4, with invasion defense in mind. While the phase shift technology had made such precautions seem obsolete, right now Sarah was grateful for the military-grade reinforcement and emergency supplies. Elena's comm unit crackled again. This is High Command. Phase shift generators 1 through 7 are experiencing critical failures. Sabotage is suspected. All defense forces are to implement Protocol Omega immediately. Acknowledged, Elena responded, her voice steady despite the circumstances. She turned to Sarah. We need to move. This shelter is secure, but it's also isolated. We need to get to the Central Command bunker. A thunderous crash from upstairs made them both jump. Sarah could hear multiple sets of footsteps moving above them, along with voices speaking in languages her translator couldn't process. The sound of breaking dishes made her wince, all that food, all those preparations, being destroyed by whatever invaders had breached their defenses. There's a maintenance tunnel, Elena whispered, moving toward a seemingly solid wall. It connects all the diplomatic residences to the command center. I had it installed when we decided to host the dinner here. Sarah stared at her. You knew something like this might happen. We hoped for the best but planned for the worst. The phase shift technology made us complacent, but some of us never forgot the basic principles of defense. Elena pressed her palm against the wall, and a hidden panel slid open silently. They had just started moving toward the tunnel when a new voice echoed through Elena's comm unit. The translation was rough, but the message was clear enough. To all human forces, this is Thrax Rantar of the Sarannai Imperium. We are approaching Eden 4 with peaceful intent. The attack on your phase shift network was not our doing. We have detected ships from the Crimson Scavenger fleet, pirates who have plagued our borders for centuries. They must have followed our diplomatic vessels. We offer our assistance in defending your world. Elena's eyes widened. The Sarannai? They've never offered military aid to anyone. Before they could process this development, another transmission cut through the chaos. This one was in perfectly clear standard English, though the voice had an unmistakably alien resonance. Humans of Eden 4, I am High Counselor Kthra of the Kataskan Imperium. 10 years ago, our forces attempted to conquer your world. Today, we come to atone. Our vessels stand ready to assist in your defense. We ask only for the chance to prove our sincerity. Sarah couldn't believe what she was hearing. The Kataskans want to help us? After everything they did? Elena was already moving through the tunnel, gesturing for Sarah to follow. The political upheaval in their empire must have been even more significant than our intelligence suggested. But we can't trust them, not yet. The tunnel was narrow but well lit, clearly designed for quick evacuation. As they moved, Sarah could hear more crashes and explosions from the surface. The invaders, these Crimson Scavengers, were clearly making themselves at home. Commander Rodriguez, a new voice came through the comm, this is Admiral Chen. The Sarannai and Kataskan vessels are engaging the pirate fleet in orbit. But we have multiple enemy dropships already on the ground. There. He paused. They're heading straight for the diplomatic sector. Straight for your location. They knew about the dinner, Sarah realized. They knew we'd be gathering diplomatic delegations here. This isn't just a raid, it's targeted. Elena nodded grimly. The phase shift sabotage, the timing of the attack, someone told them exactly when and where to hit us. They reached a junction in the tunnel system, and Elena checked a small holographic map. The command bunker is 2 levels down. We need to. She never finished the sentence. The wall beside them exploded inward, showering them with debris. Through the dust, Sarah could see multiple figures wearing advanced combat armor. Their helmets were adorned with crimson markings, the Crimson Scavengers had found them. But before either woman could react, another explosion rocked the tunnel. This one came from behind the pirates, and through the new opening stepped a towering figure in ornate battle armor. The sigil of the Kataskan Imperium gleamed on its chest. "Get behind me," the Kataskan warrior growled in perfect English. "High Counselor Kthra sent us to ensure the safety of our dinner hosts." Elena kept her weapon raised, clearly torn between the known threat of the pirates and the historical enemy now offering aid. But Sarah noticed something that made her grab the commander's arm. "Elena, look at their armor. The pirates, they're wearing modified Kataskan battle suits. Old ones, from before the political upheaval." The Kataskan warrior nodded. "The ones who attacked you 10 years ago. Many of them refused to accept the reforms. They became pirates, scavengers, raiders. They're here to finish what they started. We're here to stop them." Another explosion rocked the tunnel, and Sarah could hear more fighting above. Throughout it all, one thought kept nagging at her: her Christmas feast was probably getting cold. And oddly enough, that mundane concern helped her focus on what needed to be done. "The command bunker has a full kitchen," she said suddenly. Both Elena and the Kataskan warrior turned to stare at her. "If we can get there, I can prepare food for the defenders, human and alien alike. Breaking bread together, isn't that what this day was supposed to be about?" Elena looked like she wanted to argue, but the Kataskan warrior made a sound that might have been a laugh. "In our culture, sharing food is a sacred bond. Perhaps that's why these pirates targeted your diplomatic dinner. They fear what might happen if we all sat down together as equals." More explosions echoed through the tunnel system. The battle for Eden was just beginning, and its outcome might depend on whether humanity could trust their former enemies, and whether a Christmas feast, hastily recreated in a military bunker, could bring together species that had been separated by fear and mistrust for far too long. Breaking bread. The command bunker's kitchen wasn't exactly what Sarah was used to, but she'd worked with worse. As she surveyed the military-grade cooking equipment and emergency food supplies, she could hear the sounds of battle echoing through the reinforced walls. The Crimson Scavengers were laying siege to the bunker, but they were meeting fierce resistance from both human forces and their unexpected alien allies. The Kataskan warrior who had rescued them, who had introduced himself as Battle Chief Vorkath, stood guard at the kitchen entrance. His massive frame made the doorway look almost comically small. Elena was coordinating defense efforts from the command center next door, her voice steady as she directed troops and processed reports from their alien allies. "The Sarannai fleet has destroyed 3 pirate carriers," Elena called out. "But the scavengers' ground forces are still advancing. They're using some kind of technology that interferes with our phase shift capabilities at close range." "Stolen Kataskan tech," Vorkath growled. "From the old regime. We developed it as a countermeasure to your phase shift, but never got to use it before the reforms." Sarah pulled emergency ration packs from a storage unit, her mind already working on how to transform the bland military supplies into something worthy of a diplomatic dinner. "Why did you reform?" she asked, genuinely curious. "Your empire was one of the most powerful in the galaxy." Vorkath was quiet for a moment. "Because of you. Humans. When you shifted your entire civilization into another dimension rather than fight us, it forced us to question everything. A species so advanced they could simply step sideways out of reality, yet they chose to avoid conflict rather than demonstrate their power. It shattered our understanding of strength. The bunker shook with another explosion, but Sarah barely noticed. She was too focused on her work, combining ration packs with the few fresh ingredients she'd managed to grab before evacuating her house. So the current High Counselor Thra was a minor diplomatic official before the reforms, Vorkath explained. She argued that any species capable of such technology must have much to teach us. When the old regime refused to listen, she gathered supporters. The civil war that followed nearly destroyed us, but in the end, her vision prevailed. A new voice joined the conversation, the melodic tones of a Sarannai. A vision that some still resist, obviously. The speaker was Thrax Thran Tar himself, the merchant who had first attempted peaceful contact with humanity. He had arrived at the bunker with a group of refugees, both human and alien, who had been caught in the fighting. Merchant Tar, Elena acknowledged, stepping away from her command console. Your fleet's assistance has been invaluable. The Sarannai's face tendrils rippled in what Sarah assumed was their equivalent of a smile. Please, call me Thrax. And I must admit, our assistance is not entirely altruistic. The Crimson Scavengers have long been a threat to galactic commerce. When we learned they had infiltrated our diplomatic mission, we knew we had to act. Sarah listened to the conversation while continuing her work. She had managed to create something resembling a proper Christmas dinner, though with some unusual substitutions. The emergency ration meat had been spiced and prepared to mimic turkey, and she'd found enough synthetic vegetables to create reasonable side dishes. It's ready, she announced, stepping back from the serving counter. It's not exactly traditional, but it's perfect, a new voice declared. Everyone turned to see High Counselor Thra entering the kitchen, her ornate diplomatic robes scarred from recent combat. Because it represents what we came here to do, share a meal as equals. The Kataskan leader was accompanied by several other diplomatic representatives who had made it to the bunker, a delegation from the Zeltharian Collective, their crystalline forms shimmering in the artificial light, and even a few members of smaller galactic powers who had been invited to the original dinner. The scavengers are falling back, Thra announced. Their phase shift dampeners can't maintain coverage over such a wide area. Once they're out of range. As if on cue, Sarah felt the familiar tingling sensation of a phase shift. Unity. The phase shift rippled through the command bunker, but something was different this time. Instead of the usual smooth transition, the energy pulsed erratically. Through the bunker's observation screens, Sarah could see parts of Eden flickering in and out of phase while others remained solid. The system's destabilized, Elena announced, rushing to the main control panel. The scavenger's dampening technology has interfered with the shift harmonics. If we can't stabilize it, then the entire colony could be torn apart across multiple dimensions, Thrax finished, his face tendrils writhing with concern. The same thing happened to the Caraxian civilization 1,000 years ago. There were no survivors. High Counselor Thra stepped forward, her tall frame radiating authority. We have technology that might help. Vorkath, contact the fleet. Have them prepare the resonance stabilizers. Wait, Sarah interrupted, surprising herself with her boldness. The phase shift was designed to protect us from threats. But right now, we have allies willing to help us. Maybe we don't need to shift the entire colony. Elena looked skeptical. The phase shift is our greatest defense. It's also what's kept us isolated, Sarah countered. Look around this room. Kataskans, Sarannai, Zeltharians, species that were our enemies are now sharing a meal in our command bunker. Maybe that's a better defense than any technology. The bunker shook again as another explosion rocked the surface. Through the observation screens, they could see the Crimson Scavengers regrouping for another assault. Their modified Kataskan battle armor made them formidable opponents, but now they faced a united front of former enemies. She's right, Thrax said, reaching for what passed for eating utensils among his people. The scavengers' strength comes from division. They exploit the gaps between civilizations, the spaces where trust breaks down. But here, in this room, those gaps are being bridged over a meal. Thra nodded slowly. In the old Kataskan Empire, we would have never considered sharing food with potential conquests. We saw it as weakness. But your Christmas feast. She paused, sampling a piece of the transformed emergency ration turkey. It shows strength through unity. The Zeltharian representatives, who had been quietly observing, suddenly chimed in with their crystalline voices. We detect a pattern shift, they announced in unison. The phase variance is stabilizing, but not through technology. The combined presence of multiple species' energy signatures is creating a natural harmonic. Elena's eyes widened as she checked the readings. They're right. The more we work together, the more stable our dimensional pocket becomes. It's as if the phase shift technology was never meant to isolate us, Sarah finished. Maybe it was waiting for the right moment, the right combination of species, to create something new. Another alarm blared through the bunker. The scavengers had breached the outer defenses and were approaching the command center. But now, something was different. The United Alien Fleet in orbit had coordinated their attacks, pushing back the pirate vessels. On the ground, mixed squadrons of human, Kataskan, and Sarannai troops moved with surprising coordination. They're targeting the kitchen, Vorkath announced, reading tactical displays. They know what we're doing here. The symbolism of this meal threatens everything they represent. Sarah looked at her hastily prepared feast, spread out on the bunker's utilitarian tables. It wasn't the elegant diplomatic dinner she had originally planned, but somehow this felt more meaningful. Representatives of species that had been at war for centuries were breaking bread together, finding common ground in the simple act of sharing a meal. Then let's give them something to really worry about, she said, her confidence growing. Commander Rodriguez, can we broadcast what's happening here? Let everyone see what's really possible. Elena smiled, the first real smile Sarah had seen since the crisis began. Already done. Every colony in the sector is receiving feeds from this bunker. The scavengers wanted to make an example of us. Well, they're about to become an example themselves. Through the observation screens, Sarah could see the Crimson Scavengers' forces faltering as they witnessed the unprecedented cooperation between their targets. Their attack had been meant to prevent diplomatic relations between humans and the galactic community. Instead, it had accelerated the very unity they feared. As if to emphasize the point, the phase shift stabilized completely, but not in the way anyone expected. Instead of shifting the colony into isolation, it created a new kind of space, one that existed simultaneously in multiple dimensions. A space where all species could interact freely, while remaining protected from those who would threaten their peace. Well, Sarah said, looking at the diverse group gathered around her improvised Christmas feast, shall we finish our dinner? I believe we were just getting to know each other. The battle wasn't over yet, but in that moment, surrounded by former enemies sharing a meal of emergency rations transformed by creativity and hope, Sarah knew something fundamental had changed. The Christmas feast that was meant to be humanity's first step toward diplomatic relations had become something far more important, proof that the strongest barriers between species could be broken not by weapons or technology, but by the simple willingness to sit down and share a meal together. A new tradition. The Crimson Scavengers' final assault on the command bunker came not with a bang, but with a whisper. As the united forces of humans and their new allies pushed them back, something unexpected happened. The pirates' ranks began to break, not from external pressure, but from within. They're surrendering, Vorkath announced, his tactical display showing dozens of red dots changing to neutral yellow. Not just here, but across the colony. They're laying down their weapons. Sarah, still stationed behind her makeshift kitchen counter, watched as Elena coordinated with the alien fleet commanders to secure the surrendering forces. The emergency ration Christmas dinner she had prepared sat half-eaten on the tables, but its impact continued to ripple outward. It's the broadcast, Thrax observed, his face tendrils rippling with what Sarah had learned was amusement. Many of these scavengers are former soldiers from various empires, cast aside during political reforms or military downsizing. Seeing their former leaders sharing a meal, working together. He gestured at the feast. It reminds them of what they lost. High Counselor Kthra stepped forward, her imposing frame somehow less threatening now that she had gravy stains on her diplomatic robes. Then perhaps we should remind them of what they can regain. She turned to Elena. Commander Rodriguez, with your permission, I would like to extend an invitation to the surrendered forces. Let them join us. Elena's eyebrows shot up. Join us? They just tried to destroy our colony. And we once tried to enslave your entire species, Kthra countered softly. Yet here I am, eating your food, fighting alongside you. Change must start somewhere. Why not here? Why not now? Sarah found herself nodding. I can make more food. We have enough emergency rations to feed an army, quite literally, in this case. The Zeltharian representatives, their crystalline forms humming with energy, added their own perspective. We detect significant pattern alterations in the phase shift matrix. The convergence of multiple species' energy signatures has created a new stable state. It would be optimal to include as many variables as possible. They mean that the more diverse our gathering becomes, the stronger our new dimensional space will be, Thrax translated. The phase shift is evolving beyond a simple defense mechanism. It's becoming a bridge between worlds. As if to prove his point, the view screens showed the colony settling into its new state of existence, neither fully shifted nor fully present in normal space, but somewhere in between. A place where multiple species could coexist while remaining protected from genuine threats. The first group of surrendered scavengers was brought to the bunker under heavy guard. Their leader, a grizzled veteran wearing badly maintained Kataskan armor, seemed shocked to see his former enemies sharing a meal. I am Grax Thor, he announced, his voice rough with emotion. Once a battle chief of the Kataskan fleet, before the reforms. We thought you were planning an alliance against us. Against all the displaced soldiers and crews who lost everything when the empires changed. No, Sarah said, stepping forward with a plate of food. We were planning a Christmas dinner. There's a difference. She held out the plate. Would you like to join us? The next few hours were surreal. Former pirates sat next to their recent enemies, sharing food and, gradually, stories. Sarah found herself cooking batch after batch of emergency ration turkey, each time experimenting with different spices to accommodate various alien palates. The Zeltharians, who didn't eat physical food, contributed by using their crystalline resonance to create harmonious background tones that helped soothe tensions. You know, Elena said, watching the unprecedented gathering, when we first planned this diplomatic dinner, we hoped it might lead to better relations with a few key species. I never imagined. That's the thing about cooking, Sarah replied, putting the finishing touches on another platter. You can plan the perfect meal, but sometimes the best dishes come from working with what you have and being open to unexpected combinations. As the day wore on, news arrived from across the sector. Other colonies, inspired by the broadcast from Eden 4, were organizing their own diplomatic gatherings. The phase shift technology, rather than isolating humanity, was being adapted to create safe spaces for interspecies cooperation throughout human territory. We should make this a tradition, Thrax suggested, helping Sarah clean up despite her protests that guests shouldn't have to work. Not just on human Christmas, but throughout the year. Different species hosting feasts, sharing their cultures. The Phase Feast, Kthra declared. A celebration of unity through diversity, held in the spaces between dimensions. She looked at Sarah. And I believe we have found our first grand chef. Sarah laughed, but she could see the potential. What had started as a desperate attempt to salvage a diplomatic dinner had become something far more significant. The Christmas feast that was meant to be humanity's first step toward rejoining the galactic community had instead redefined what that community could be. 3 months later, Sarah stood in a brand new kitchen specially designed to accommodate the preparation of dishes from dozens of species. The phase feast had indeed become a regular event, rotating between different colonies and species. Former Crimson Scavengers, now calling themselves the Unity Guard, provided security alongside their former enemies. As she prepared for another interspecies gathering, Sarah couldn't help but smile at the memory of that first chaotic Christmas dinner in the command bunker. The phase shift technology that had once isolated humanity now created spaces where all species could gather safely, sharing meals and stories and gradually building understanding. The Christmas feast that almost wasn't had become a symbol of something greater, proof that sometimes the best way to break down barriers between species wasn't through grand diplomatic gestures or shows of force, but through the simple act of sharing food with unexpected guests. And as Sarah checked her supplies for the upcoming feast, she made sure to include plenty of emergency rations. After all, you never knew when you might need to improvise another miracle. The end.